I'm Kurtop, and these are 100 artifacts found deep underground that shouldn't be there. A message to Galileo Galilei. The middle finger of the right hand of the great Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei, now kept in the Galileo Museum in Florence, has long become a symbol of scientific progress and the indomitable spirit of reason. This strange exhibit, enclosed in a hanging gilded glass egg, was removed from Galileo's body almost a century after his death. Why did this particular finger become such an important symbol? Galileo, who became famous for his discoveries in astronomy, became the main opponent of the Church's dogmas about the geocentric model of the world. His works on the heliocentric system were seen as a challenge not only to religious beliefs, but also to the very idea of the unchanging structure of the world. The middle finger, as some believe, symbolizes the scientist's firm refusal to submit to dogmas, defending the truth based on observations and scientific experiments. Today, in the era of space exploration, Galileo's finger can be seen as an ironic message to those who continue to ignore the achievements of science, to be among the supporters of ignorance. Galileo, who was the first to see Jupiter's moons and the stars of the Milky Way with a telescope, expanded humanity's understanding of the universe. His legacy continues to inspire those who seek the truth about our place in the cosmos, even if that truth may include the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Khmer dinosaur. Cambodia Taprom Temple, late 12th century. In one of the niches, there is a palm-sized bas-relief, the body of a lizard, 4 legs, and a row of plates along its back. Tourists immediately called it a stegosaurus, because in textbooks, only late Jurassic dinosaurs have such plates. The relief itself is carved at the same level as dozens of other ornaments. The stone is the same gray sandstone. The wall is covered with a thin biological patina. The thickness of the coating was measured with a laser scanner. It is even with no clean tracks that would have been left by recent carving. Chemical analysis of the patina indicated the work is at least 500 years old, dating to the temple's construction period. This discovery drew archaeologists' attention. The plates match in shape and are arranged just like palm leaves, which the artists of Toprom often used to frame animal figures. If you mentally remove the leafy border, what remains is an ordinary rhinoceros. A large body, massive legs, a short tail. This interpretation fits into the iconography of the complex. Rhinoceroses are common in the bas-reliefs of Angkor. Now I'll explain why the dinosaur version appeared. By the early 2000s, the stone coating had partly worn off, leaf edges eroded, and the silhouette started to look like plate outlines. The photos spread across forums of paleomyth enthusiasts, and the story grew without source verification. When the panel was cleaned using a microabrasive method, in 2023 remnants of leaf veins and small decorative carvings appeared, which are never depicted on the backs of dinosaurs. The conclusion is this is a regular Khmer rhinoceros, and the plates are simply parts of a palm tree eroded over time. One worn ornament turned into a dinosaur sensation, even though what we actually have is just a faded background. Beer as salary. The workers who built the pyramids were paid with beer, not on holidays, not as a bonus, but every day. 45 liters per person. Money didn't exist at all. Imagine, you spend 8 hours hauling stone blocks, each weighing 2.5 tons, your back is burning, your hands are worn out, and finally the end of your shift arrives. The overseer comes up to you and hands you a bucket of cloudy, thick mush with pieces of grain inside. That's your salary. That's your money. That's everything you have. Beer was different back then, not like today. It was thick, almost like porridge. They drank it through a reed straw with a filter. Otherwise, you'd just be chewing the grain. It had a lot of calories, but not much alcohol. But the main thing is that it was a unit of account, like the ruble or the dollar today, only in a bucket. Mainstream scholarship says it was a barter system, a logical system for an agrarian civilization without coins. But here's what doesn't fit into this simple picture. In papyri, they found records of bonuses. For processing, they gave extra grain. For special work, oil or cloth. For long service, a large ration. So they had a system of grades, bonuses, and categories, without a single coin, but more complex than in some modern companies. The first mint in Europe appeared around 600 BC. By that time, Egypt had already been using tax records for 1,500 years, paid salaries, and imposed fines for shortages, just without metal. And when that salary was once delayed, the Egyptians didn't stay silent. They did something that went down in history forever. I'll tell you about it a bit later in the third segment. Because what they did, the world kept repeating for another 3,000 years. Chinese emperors stole. Chinese emperors believed that jade could grant immortality. That's why they instructed that they be buried in special suits made of jade plates, held together with golden threads. Ancient chronicles mention such burials, but for centuries, no one found any evidence of their existence. Many believed it was just a myth. Everything changed. In 1958, near Mount Lingshan, soldiers blasting a rock to build a bomb shelter accidentally discovered the untouched 2,000-year-old tomb of Liu Shen, ruler of the Western Han Dynasty, and his wife Du Wan. These tombs turned out to be real underground palaces, filled with tens of thousands of relics, weapons, vessels, and even jade incense burners. The most astonishing discovery was 2 burial suits made of jade, preserved in perfect condition. Liu Shen's suit. The suit was made up of 2,498 jade plates, connected with 1,100 grams of gold thread, while his wife's suit had 2,160 plates and 700 grams of thread. These outfits completely followed the contours of the bodies, including face masks. The tradition of such suits was explained not only by the symbolic role of jade, but also by its magical one. In ancient China, jade was considered the embodiment of purity and resilience. It was regarded as a sacred material. According to beliefs, it could protect the body from decay. Special significance was given to the 9 orifices of the body: the eyes, ears, nostrils, mouth, genitals, and anus, which were sealed with jade plugs to ensure immortality. However, discoveries have shown that the theory did not hold true. Jade suits did not protect bodies from decay. Why are such finds so rare? The answer is simple: looting. Even before the advent of archaeology, jade was valued incredibly highly. Tomb raiders hunted for it for centuries. Tombs were burned, the suits were dismantled, and the jade plates were sold or melted down. Over time, the looting became so widespread that in 222, Emperor Wen of Wei issued a decree banning the use of jade suits. He put an end to a 400-year-old tradition acknowledging that immortality in this form was impossible. Although the idea seems grand, the end of the tradition turned out to be both tragic and ironic. Emperor Wen was determined enough to break this vicious cycle, and perhaps it was because of this. Because of the ban, we were able to see genuine jade suits centuries later. Tutankhamun's sandals. This elegant pair of sandals was found in the famous tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun and is now part of the Egyptian collection. These sandals are not just footwear, but a true work of art and a symbolic detail reflecting the worldview of the ancient Egyptians. They are made of wood and covered with intricate inlays made from bark, green leather, and gold foil. The images on the sandals depict Egypt's bound enemies, Nubians and Asians, symbolizing the pharaoh's triumph over his adversaries. The sandals were possibly used as part of ceremonial attire and held special significance. Imagine the pharaoh putting on such footwear as if trampling his enemies, demonstrating his power and protection of Egypt. The inlay and detailing of the work are striking in their craftsmanship, attesting to the high level of skill of ancient Egyptian artisans. Next, the pharaoh. The sandals emphasized his status, his divine right to the throne, and his role as the protector of the nation. A bag from the Stone Age. Around 2500 BC, a Neolithic resident in what is now Germany found a unique solution for decorating his bag. During excavations near Leipzig in 2012, archaeologists discovered more than 100 dog teeth neatly arranged in a grave, which led them to believe that they decorated the flap of a bag. Archaeologists noted that over time, the leather or fabric of the bag disappeared, leaving only the teeth, all pointing in one direction. These teeth most likely decorated the outside of the bag. They are all arranged in the same way, resembling a modern flap. These finds were made at the Profan quarry. Other important artifacts were also found in the same area, including the burial of a woman who lived around 50 BC, buried with half a kilogram of gold jewelry. However, even among such rich finds, the bag with dog teeth became a real discovery. This is the first time archaeologists have found direct evidence of the existence of such an accessory. Decorating this bag required the teeth of about 10 dogs. In other burials from that time, archaeologists also found wolf teeth, dog teeth, and shells, which apparently were used to decorate blankets and clothing. When the fabric decomposed, only these decorative elements remained. Shaving the whole body. Egyptians shaved their entire bodies like every 2 days. By that I mean everything: head, armpits, legs, eyebrows, eyelashes. Priests did this 4 times a day, not because it was fashionable, not because it looked better, but because in a hot climate, in tight clothing, and around animals, lice were everywhere. And body hair was not seen as normal but as a threat: dirt, impurity, and insult to the gods. Herodotus recorded this personally. He came to Egypt, looked at the priests, and wrote something like this: "They are the only people in the world who shave, not for beauty, but for cleanliness." A Greek, used to beards and curls, looked at this as something alien. Official science says a religious ritual of purity associated with the cult of the gods. But here's a detail that's usually not mentioned. At the same time, Egyptians wore wigs. Expensive, heavy, made from real human hair, sometimes from horsetails. The wealthier someone was, the more extravagant their wig. None of their own hair, just a heap of someone else's. The idea was simple. Your hair is dirty, someone else's is a status symbol. Imagine a modern person who shaves their eyebrows every morning and then glues on fake ones. That's pretty much what it looked like. And here's what's interesting. A modern person spends about 70 hours a year on hair care, haircuts, styling, washing. An Egyptian priest spent just as much time but on completely removing hair, 4 times a day, every day with no days off. Razors are found in tombs alongside food and jewelry. That is, among the things considered absolutely essential for the afterlife. A sword makes sense, gold makes sense, and a razor. Welcome to Egypt. But when it came to hygiene, things weren't as smooth as they seemed. They shaved perfectly, 4 times a day, but by the age of 35 they had lost every single tooth. And sugar wasn't to blame for this. It was bread. The Babylonian vision of the earth and beyond, the Babylonian map of the world, or Imago Mundi, is one of the oldest known maps created around the 8th century BC. The tablet, made of clay, reflects the ancient Babylonians' view of the earth. At the center of the map is Babylon, located on the Euphrates River. The map is surrounded by important geographical features: Susa to the south, Urartu to the northeast, and Haban to the northwest. Outside this territory are triangular regions, which researchers believe symbolize unknown lands or mountainous areas. The map is surrounded by a salty river called the Bitter River, which they believed flowed around the entire world. Attention is drawn to mythical inscriptions mentioning the creation of land and sea by the god Marduk, which makes the map not only a geographical, but also a cosmological artifact. The connection to UFOs arises because of the triangular areas beyond the map. Some researchers believe that the ancient inhabitants of Babylon tried to depict unknown lands, which they associated with divine or extraterrestrial beings. The secret of a 4,000-year-old mummy has been revealed. Scientists managed to uncover the mystery of the mummy of the Egyptian woman Shenet-Ah, who was sealed in a cartonnage without visible seams. With the help of computed tomography, researchers finally understood how she was embalmed about 3,000 years ago. Shenet-Ah lived during the Third Intermediate Period under the rule of the 22nd dynasty. At the time of her death, she was about 30 to 40 years old, and the careful preparation of her body for the afterlife indicates her high social status. For many years, scientists could not explain how the remains ended up inside the cartonnage, finding only a small hole near the feet. However, the scan revealed a seam along the back and lacing, which provided the key to the mystery. The embalmers softened the cartonnage to make it flexible, made an incision in the back, and placed the body inside. Then they sewed up the seam. A wooden panel at the feet was used for support. The internal organs were removed and replaced with small figurines of the sons of Horus, Imseti, Hapi, Duamutef, and Kebesenuef. Each of them protected a specific organ. It was also found that Shenet-Ah had lost several teeth, and the remaining ones were badly worn down, which may be related to the presence of sand in the food. The Egyptian woman's eyes were replaced with artificial ones, and her body was wrapped in expensive linen. Her brightly decorated sarcophagus emphasizes her privileged status. The ancient Egyptians prepared for the afterlife much like we prepare for retirement, saving resources to support themselves after death. 120 pieces of jewelry in the buttocks. The stricter the customs inspections become, the more inventive the smugglers get. Recently, a man was detained at El Prat Airport in Catalonia who tried to smuggle an entire collection of jewelry inside himself, hiding 121 pieces of jewelry in one of the most unexpected places. Between his buttocks, he hoped to pass through without any trouble. Among the hidden items were earrings, bracelets, rings, medals, and crosses, a full assortment for a jewelry shop. The man's nervous behavior and one-way ticket aroused the border guard's suspicion. He was taken to a separate room for additional inspection, where an X-ray scan revealed a large amount of metal in his backside. When the contents were extracted, even the experienced customs officers were shocked. 8 bracelets, 23 chains, 17 medals, 7 crosses, 19 rings, 15 earrings, and 32 fragments of gold jewelry. The attempt to avoid customs declaration in this way failed. The man was detained, and the gold was confiscated. Now the Spanish police are investigating the origin of the jewelry and the possible connections of the smuggler with a criminal group. Teeth and sand. By the age of 35, most Egyptians had lost almost all their teeth, not because of sweets or poor hygiene, but because of bread, the most ordinary bread. The grain was ground on stone mills. The millstones crumbled and tiny particles of sand and stone got into the flour. Every day with every meal, you were literally sanding your teeth from the inside, slowly, imperceptibly, and relentlessly. The enamel wore down to the gums. Next came abscesses, then sepsis, and then everything else. Egyptologists would open up the mummies of pharaohs, people who had unlimited access to the best food in the country, and find their teeth worn down to the roots. Ramses II, one of the greatest pharaohs in history, could hardly chew in his old age. A great warrior, a great builder, but a toothless old man. Officially, science says these are the costs of an agricultural civilization. Their milling technology was imperfect. But here's what's interesting. They actually had a recipe for toothpaste. It was found on papyrus. Crushed eggshells, ash, pumice, bull hooves. They cleaned with their fingers. There were no toothbrushes. The paste worked. It balanced the acid levels and removed plaque. Modern toothpaste appeared in the 1890s. The Egyptian one was 3,500 years earlier. It's just that the bread was tougher. And one more detail that is usually not mentioned. In the Ebers Papyrus, which is a medical treatise from 1550 BC, there are detailed instructions for treating toothaches, extracting teeth, and irrigating abscesses, something similar to filling with resin. They knew about the problem. They treated the consequences. They just couldn't remove the source, which was bread. Not because they didn't understand, but because without bread, there was no food. You know what's killing you. You see it every day. And you can't stop because otherwise you'll just die of hunger. It's not darkness, it's a trap. And by the way, when Egyptian doctors did try to treat people, the state watched their every move very closely. The price of a mistake was so high that modern surgeons would go gray. Ant-Man skull, Catamarca, Argentina. Builders were digging a trench for a water pipe and came across a row of burial urns. In one of them, they discovered a human skull of a very strange shape, which the local press called the Ant-Man's head. Honestly, it's hard to accept the shape as normal. The forehead juts forward, the crown stretches back, and the skull appears squeezed in a vice. Naturally, people first thought of aliens and genetics. The archaeologists quickly calmed things down. Between the 3rd and 12th centuries, the Ciénaga and Aguada cultures lived in these lands, and they practiced artificial cranial deformation. The process was simple. They would wrap a baby's head with cloth and fix it between wooden boards. The soft bones would gradually change shape. Of course, you're probably wondering why. It's simple. Beauty, belonging to a group, social status, just like today with tattoos or body modifications. It's worth noting that there's almost no evidence of health damage from such practices. A child's skull is flexible, and the brain grows, filling the available space. That's why most deformed skulls don't show signs of trauma or developmental delay. There are also alternatives. An alternative explanation is hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of fluid. This was pointed out by Heidi Dawson-Hobbes. But then we would expect other changes: thinner bones, asymmetry. This skull is a good example of why such finds shouldn't be immediately attributed to historical anomalies. Sometimes a strange shape isn't a message from aliens, but a very human desire to look like your own kind. The Salt Man from Iran. This remarkable find was discovered in the mid-1990s in the salt mines near Sharabad in the mountains of Iran. Archaeologists believe that these are the remains of a worker from an ancient salt mine who died right at his workplace about 1,500 years ago. The unique conditions of the cave, saturated with salty vapors, helped preserve his body in an astonishing state. Even the hair has been preserved on the mummy, which under the influence of salt has acquired a whitish tint, as well as the beard, which gives the find an even more eerie appearance. Scientists believe that the high concentration of salt in the cave prevented the decomposition process, naturally mummifying the body. The salted body looks as if time has stopped, allowing us to look into the face of the past. The Salt Man became not only an archaeological sensation, but also an important source of information about the lives of people from that era. Today, this mummy is a reminder of the harsh reality of the past and the unique interaction between humans and nature. The doctor and the fourth day. If a patient died on the fourth day of treatment, the doctor could be executed. Not for shoddy work, not for drinking on the job, but for deviating from the instructions. That's how it worked. For the first 3 days, the doctor could do anything. Experiment, try things, improvise. The state did not interfere. But from the fourth day, he was required to strictly follow the book, the official medical protocol. Every step was prescribed, every remedy specified. If he strayed and the patient died, it was a verdict. If he followed protocol and the patient died, he was forgiven. The book matters. The outcome is noted. It sounds strange, but wait. One British medical historian read this in the papyrus and at first wrote in his book, "A barbaric system that killed patients for the sake of following ritual." Then his colleagues explained to him that he misunderstood. He removed this paragraph from the next edition, quietly, without explanation. Because in reality, the Egyptians did something ingenious. They divided medicine into 2 phases. For the first 3 days, the doctor tries experimental treatment, explores options, takes risks. On the 4th day and beyond, it's the standard proven protocol that has worked on thousands of patients before you. This is the distinction between clinical trials and the standard of care, a concept that modern medicine officially established only in the 20th century. Only after several high-profile disasters with untested drugs killed thousands of people. Egypt wrote this down on Papyrus 3,500 years before that. And there's another detail in the same Edwin Smith papyrus, in the Treatise. 48 cases of injuries are described with such precision that modern neurosurgeons use it as a historical source, not as a curiosity, but as a source. That is, it describes the connection between a neck injury and paralysis of the arms. There is the concept of the meninges, and there is the diagnosis incurable. The Egyptian doctor honestly wrote this when he could not help. Imagine a surgeon telling the patient the truth in 1500 BC. Do you think that's a coincidence? Or did they have a system that we still don't fully understand? Write in the comments. I'm really interested in what you think. And now, the next fact is about workers who stopped the construction of the century and got what was due to them. This has never been found before. Norway, Oslo, the port district of Bjørvika. During the excavations in the city, archaeologists found almost 3,000 medieval items, and the lion's share of them are made of leather. Shoes of all kinds, low shoes, high boots, pairs with perforation and embossing, wrinkles on the bends, and paw prints on the soles. People repaired their shoes until the very end. Leather was valuable. They also found more than 20 fragments of leather bags. A reminder, clothing had no pockets. People wore items on belts or tied to clothes, including scabbards for swords and knives. Personal weapons were considered as ordinary an accessory as a wallet. Most touching of all, they found more than 40 children's shoes, some as small as a palm. The same construction, the same patches, just miniature. Children wore the same kinds of shoes as adults, and their things were also taken care of. The accumulation was found in the area of old riverbank dumps near the Alna River. Trash was dumped into the water, and seasonal floods swept it to the lowlands, covering it in silt and preserving it without oxygen. That's why the leather didn't fall apart but remained in layers to this day. A discovery in a hard-to-reach cave. This bronze dagger with a bone handle is a Bronze Age artifact found in Malta in an almost inaccessible cave under the Dingley Cliffs. It is dated to around 2000 BC and belongs to the Borg in Nadur phase, when there was an advanced Bronze Age culture in Malta. However, it is still unknown why the ancient inhabitants chose this remote cave to place their artifacts. Perhaps the place had special significance or ritual value. The dagger's handle is decorated with circular patterns, which draws attention and raises many questions. This motif resembles some elements of Mycenaean Greek art, which may indicate cultural influence or trade connections. Interestingly, in the Bronze Age village where this dagger was found, shards of Mycenaean pottery were also discovered. Why was the dagger left in this cave? Was it part of a ritual or a symbol of special status? We can only speculate, but every detail, from the green patina on the blade to the mysterious circles on the handle, makes us think about the life and worldview of the ancient Maltese people, and possibly their connections with the Mycenaean Greeks. Ancient banks. The practice of lending valuables at interest originated in ancient times, long before the appearance of money. Even back then, people exchanged goods or services with the obligation to return more than they had received. With the advent of a monetary economy, usury became the basis of credit operations. In one of the oldest legal documents, the Code of Hammurabi, compiled in the 18th century BC, there are already articles regulating usury. For example, Babylonian laws limited the interest rate and prohibited collecting debts from people affected by natural disasters. This can be seen as an early form of borrower protection. Real banks as full-fledged credit institutions appeared in Babylon around the 8th century BC. These institutions provided services related to money storage, lending, and currency exchange. In ancient Greece, banking functions were performed by trapezites, people who were engaged in currency exchange. However, their activities were not limited to that. They opened accounts for their clients, provided loans, and even carried out money transfers. Thus, even back then, banks played an important role in the economy. In ancient times in the Middle Ages, lending at interest was often condemned and prohibited by religions. Christianity and Islam actively fought against usury, considering it an immoral and improper practice. Nevertheless, the need for loans always existed, and people found ways to circumvent religious prohibitions. For example, in medieval Europe, Jews who were not subject to Christian prohibitions often became moneylenders, which made them an important part of the economic system of that time. The first strike in history, in 1170 BC, Egyptian workers put down their tools and sat on the ground right at the entrance to the royal tombs. No one moved, no one worked. The construction stopped. Wages, grain, and beer were delayed for 18 days. 18 days without food for the family, without the ability to buy anything at the market, without any reserves because the system was set up so that workers received just enough to live from one payment to the next. They shouted, "We are hungry and thirsty." This is not a metaphor. This is a quote literally from a papyrus that is now in the Turin Museum. Now, an important point that is usually overlooked. These were not slaves at all. These were skilled craftsmen, masons, artists, sculptors, with names, with families, with government housing in a special settlement called Deir el Medina. The state fed them, clothed them, provided medical care, and paid them a salary. They knew their worth, and they knew that nothing could be done without them. The official scholarly view is an isolated administrative failure and a typical incident, but the papyri shows something different. After this strike, the authorities developed a system for checking supplies. Records of regular warehouse inspections appeared. There was now reporting on the distribution of rations. One strike, and the state restructured its logistics. They didn't just get what they were owed, they changed the system. For comparison, the first official trade unions in Europe appeared at the beginning, and British workers fought for the right to strike for decades through the courts, through parliament, through blood. Egyptian craftsmen did it more simply. They sat down on the ground. They said, "We are hungry," and won the same day. By the way, their wages were brought to them that very evening, right to the gates. 3,000 years later, trade union activists in Europe were sent to hard labor for the same thing, while the Egyptians simply sat down and waited. And since we're talking about how Egyptians solved problems in unconventional ways, here's the next fact about that. About women, about rights, and about what happened 3,000 years earlier than you might think. The goddess of death, Cyprus, settlement of Lim. A small limestone figurine from about 3,500 years BC. A female silhouette, broad shoulders, arms akimbo, a stump for a head. Usually such figures are interpreted as fertility statuettes, but with this one, things didn't go as planned. The first modern owner was Lord Elfand. Within 6 years, all 7 members of his family died. The figurine was passed on, and in the next 3 houses similar stories happened. Sudden deaths, illnesses, accidents. When the new owner suspected a connection, he donated the figurine to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh. There, the rumors only grew stronger. One of the curators who worked with the exhibit died within a year. That's how the nickname Goddess of Death was born. What's real and what's legend? Few documents exist on early owners, and the dates often conflict. The curse likely arose from coincidences and repeated press stories. The chain of events is so frightening that the figure is now firmly part of cursed collections, like Egyptian mummies and the Bassano vase. The irony is that originally it was most likely made as a symbol of life and fertility, a statue of a goddess meant to bring children, not take them away. Today, the exhibit is shown with a disclaimer. Archaeology is the fact, the curse is the culture around the fact. But if I'm talking about strange discoveries, I can't ignore the Lembe goddess. It's a rare case when a small piece of limestone gave rise to a legend, surviving a 4,000-year journey from a Cypriot village to a museum display. A message from aliens. Easter Island, lost in the southern part of the Pacific Ocean, became famous thanks to the giant stone moai statues and the mysterious tablets with Rongorongo script. These ancient tablets, covered with strange hieroglyphs, still remain one of the greatest archaeological mysteries. Scientists believe that Rongorongo is the script of the Rapa Nui civilization. The story of their discovery begins in 1864, when the French missionary Eugène Ayrault first noticed wooden tablets covered with unusual signs. The tablets were made from the wood of the Toromiro tree, which grows on the island and could be found in almost every house. However, soon most of these artifacts disappeared due to internal wars and destruction. About 25 tablets have survived, and their study has revealed a unique style.
Напоминающий перевернутый бустрофидон.
Such a way of recording signs had previously only been found among the Incas. The tablets depict figures of animals, plants, and anthropomorphic beings. Scientists suggest that these symbols might have been used to record rituals and myths. Of particular interest is the similarity between Rongorongo and other ancient scripts. Some signs resemble the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt, India, as well as the symbols of the Harappan civilization that flourished in the Indus Valley. Some have compared the scripts of the Kuna Indians in Central America and drawings on Sumatra, leading to theories about links between ancient cultures across the ocean. Attempts to decipher Rongorongo continue to this day, but so far these writings have not been fully understood. One theory suggests that they describe rituals involving sacrifices to the gods. Another hypothesis, more fantastical, suggests an extraterrestrial origin for these symbols, hinting at contact with alien civilizations. How else in those ancient distant times could people living on different continents have similar writing systems, while today, despite having countless ways to connect through phones, satellites, and the internet, we still speak different languages? The mystery of Rongorongo remains unsolved, but its study continues to inspire scientists and enthusiasts around the world. The giant jade dragon. Chinese archaeologists have discovered the largest jade dragon of the Hongshan Neolithic culture. The artifact was found in the Yuanbaoshan stone tomb, located in Hoshun Aohan, Inner Mongolia. The jade dragon measures 15.8 centimeters in length, 9.5 centimeters in width, and 3 centimeters in thickness, and is a unique find with no analogs in this region. The excavations also revealed architectural remains, fragments of human bones, tombs, hearths, and various artifacts, including jade and painted ceramic items. Among them were tripod bowls and basins. Carbon-14 dating showed that the site belongs to the late Hongshan culture and was created more than 5,000 years ago. Stoneheads. The giant stoneheads of La Venta, found in what is now Mexico, are among the most mysterious artifacts of the ancient Olmec civilization. These massive sculptures, created about 3,000 years ago, are monolithic heads carved from large basalt stones. The height of the heads ranges from 1.5 to 3.5 meters, and their weight reaches several tons. A total of 4 such heads have been discovered in the territory of La Venta, each with unique facial features and distinguished by the characteristic Olmec carving style. The Olmecs, one of the earliest and most mysterious civilizations of Central America, lived in the territory of what is now the state of Tabasco in Mexico. The facial features carved on the heads are often interpreted as African, which has given rise to many hypotheses and theories about possible cultural contacts between the Olmecs and other continents. However, there is no direct evidence of such contacts, and most scholars believe that these facial features were characteristic of the Olmec culture itself. Carving basalt requires significant effort and skill, especially considering the organic tools available at that time. The Olmecs apparently used primitive tools made of stone and wood, which makes their achievements in sculpture even more impressive. How they were able to achieve such a degree of detail and expressiveness remains a mystery. Another question arises regarding the transportation of these massive stones. The basalt quarry is located in the Tuxtla Mountains, about 80 kilometers from La Venta. This means that the ancient craftsmen had to move huge stone blocks through dense jungle and rough terrain. The meaning and purpose of these stone heads also remain a subject of debate among scholars. Some researchers believe that the heads depicted rulers or important figures, possibly a warrior or a priest, which emphasized their status and significance. The expressive facial features and unique elements of the headdresses carved on the heads could have symbolized strength and power. Native American airplanes. In Mexico and South America, amazing artifacts have been found, known as Native American airplanes. These miniature gold figurines dating back hundreds or possibly even thousands of years are striking in their detail. At first glance, they are incredible toys. However, their shape is too reminiscent of modern flying machines, such as space shuttles or airplanes. Scientists were especially intrigued by the tail rudders, the symmetrical notches on the wings, and other elements that would have no practical purpose in a toy. The question arises, what served as the basis for creating these figurines? The only plausible explanation is that the craftsmen copied what they saw. Perhaps these artifacts are a reflection of real events, when the inhabitants of ancient America gained.
Далі за польотами загадочних апаратів.
Some researchers link these findings to theories about ancient astronauts, claiming that the Anunnaki aliens, or representatives of another civilization, visited Earth and left their traces. The mystery of these little airplanes is heightened by another fact. Modern engineers have managed to create models based on these artifacts, which, when fitted with an engine, are actually capable of flying. What is this? Is it a coincidence, an ancient myth, or evidence of technologies that came from other planets? Women and rights. An Egyptian woman could own land, file lawsuits, take out loans, and demand a divorce in 1500 BC, not as an exception but as a norm enshrined in law. When European historians first encountered these papyri in the 19th century, some decided the documents were fake, because what was written didn't fit any picture of the ancient world they knew. A woman buying land. A woman wins a court case against men. A woman specifies in a marriage contract what she will take in case of divorce. A British Egyptologist wrote in the 1880s, obviously, these are exceptional cases related to royal families. 40 years later, another 300 similar documents were found about ordinary women, about merchants, weavers, and wives of craftsmen. He never commented on this topic again. The papyri preserved specific cases. A woman named Erie sued her brother for their father's inheritance and won. Another woman, not from a noble family, bought 3 slaves on her own, without a husband, without permission, without male witnesses. She simply came, paid, and took the document. A third woman made a will and distributed her property among her children, according to her own wishes, not her husband's. Mainstream scholarship says it's an exceptional system connected to the peculiarities of Egyptian religion and the cult of the goddess Isis. But here's what doesn't fit. This worked for 3,000 years, not just a century, but 3,000 years continuously. Different pharaohs, different dynasties, different conquerors. The system remained. So it's not about religion, it's about the fact that it simply worked. For comparison, ancient Greece, the cradle of democracy as we were told in school, gave women absolutely nothing. No vote, no property, no rights in court. A woman in Athens was legally equated to a child, always under the guardianship of her father, brother, or husband. Rome was the same. British women gained the right to vote in 1928. French women in 1944. Swiss women in 1971. Egypt granted women property rights 3,400 years before Switzerland did. And here's what's especially interesting. When Egypt was conquered by the Greeks under the Ptolemies, they came face to face with this system. Egyptian women continued to go to court, own land, and make deals. The Greek settlers looked at this with bewilderment. Some Greek men who married Egyptian women were surprised to find out that their wife could be the first to file for divorce. It's said that some of them were not thrilled about this. And the next fact is about a law that sounds like a joke, but it's not a joke. People were executed for breaking this law. And it wasn't Egyptians who were executed, it was foreigners who didn't know the rules. The Sabu disc. This is one of the most mysterious artifacts of ancient Egypt, found in the tomb of Sabu, a descendant of Pharaoh Ajib. It is at least 5,000 years old, but its true purpose remains a mystery. At first glance, it's a stone disc with 3 curved petals, but the details make you think. The thickness in some places is only 1.5 mm, which indicates incredible precision in its manufacture. Considering the level of technology at that time, many people wonder how this was possible. Scientists hypothesize that the disc could have been part of a ritual or a decorative element, but there are other theories that go beyond the usual. Some researchers believe that the Sabu disc could have been a copy of a device left by guests from the sky, a highly advanced civilization that visited Earth in ancient times. The structure and shape of the artifact resemble modern aerodynamic devices, or even elements of complex mechanisms. The Egyptians might have considered this object sacred and tried to reproduce something they saw but did not understand. Some think the Sabu disc could unlock the secrets of ancient civilizations' contact with the extraterrestrials. For now, these are just speculations, but the mystical aura surrounding this artifact continues to captivate minds and invites us to delve into the mysteries of the past. A grand discovery in Egypt. Archaeologists have found an ancient tomb with 11 sealed burials near Luxor, Egypt, in the South Asasif necropolis. The tomb dates back to the Middle Kingdom and likely served as a family burial site for several generations during the 12th and early 13th dynasties. The discovery was made possible thanks to a modern expedition of Egyptian and American scientists. This is the first Middle Kingdom burial found in South Asasif, which expands our understanding of this necropolis and its connection to the Theban necropolis. Due to ancient floods, many wooden coffins and linen wrappings were destroyed, but the ornaments have been preserved, including amulets and necklaces made of amethyst, agate, and faience. One of the unique items was a fertility figurine made of bluish-green faience, decorated with drawings and featuring grooves for attaching hair made of clay beads. A square offering plate was also found, depicting symbolic offerings such as a bull's head, bread, and meat, which may have been used in rituals. The remains of 5 women, 2 men, and 3 children were placed in wooden coffins oriented from north to south. Jewelry was preserved in the women's burials, while the children and one of the men were buried without any. The other man was found with a necklace made of 40 faience beads and an amulet shaped like a hippopotamus head. This discovery is especially important in the context of the revival of tourist interest in Egypt, where historical treasures are once again attracting attention. Ancient love for sweets. The love for sweets arose in humans long before their diet changed, and as scientists have discovered, our ancestors were prepared for this thanks to ancient DNA. The AMY1 gene, which is responsible for breaking down complex carbohydrates, appeared much earlier than previously thought and may have played a key role in the development of civilization. The The process of digestion begins in the mouth, where saliva contains amylase, an enzyme that turns starch into simple carbohydrates. It was previously believed that this enzyme appeared with the advent of agriculture, when bread and starchy foods became part of the human diet. However, a study by the University of Buffalo and the Jackson Laboratory in the United States showed that saliva and amylase existed more than 800,000 years ago, long before the advent of agriculture. Studies of ancient genomes, including those of people who lived 45,000 years ago in Siberia, revealed that they already had between 4 and 8 copies of the AMY1 gene. This suggests that the mutation responsible for the synthesis of amylase appeared as a result of natural selection. Moreover, this gene was also present in Neanderthals and Denisovans, which confirms its ancient origin. The comparison also showed that in modern Europeans, especially among farmers over the last 4,000 years, the number of copies of this gene increased, which is related to changes in diet. A cat is more valuable than a human. In ancient Egypt, the accidental killing of a cat was punishable by death, even if it was unintentional. In the 60s BC, a Roman soldier accidentally ran over a cat with a cart. He didn't even realize what had happened at first, only understood when a crowd began to gather around. The Egyptians didn't shout or demand a trial. They just surrounded him, that's all. The Roman ambassador rushed over personally. Egypt at that time was an ally of Rome, politically valuable and strategically important. The ambassador pleaded, explained, and offered compensation. The crowd stayed as the soldier was executed in the street. Herodotus described a similar case earlier and added a phrase that sounds like a verdict on all Roman diplomacy. No intercession by kings could save the guilty. Officially, science says, the religious cult of the goddess Bastet, the cat was considered a sacred animal. That's true, but it's only half the explanation. Here's the second half, which is usually not mentioned. Egypt lived on grain. It was currency, food, tax, and army all at once. Granaries were literally the state bank, and the main enemy of this bank was rats. A single rat colony could destroy a month's supply of grain for an entire district in just a few weeks. Cats were the first line of defense, the only effective line of defense. To kill a cat meant to weaken the defense of the granary. It meant to threaten food. It meant to threaten the state. The death penalty for killing a cat was not fanaticism, it was economic policy. Egyptians understood this and deliberately wrapped it in religion. Because do not kill a cat, it's a sin before the gods works better than do not kill a cat, it harms grain logistics. The first one stops your hand automatically. The second one requires explanations. Cats were mummified, temples were built for them. In the city of Bubastis alone, archaeologists found more than 300,000 cat mummies. 300,000. That's not a cult, that's an industry. When Persian King Cambyses waged war on Egypt, legend says he ordered his soldiers to carry cats in front during the attack. The Egyptian archers lowered their bows, and the city surrendered peacefully. I don't know if this is true or not, but the very existence of this story shows how seriously the Egyptians treated cats. Today, cats are the most viewed content in the history of the internet. Billions of views, thousands of memes, entire channels dedicated just to cats. Egypt started this 3,000 years ago, just without Wi-Fi. Do you think that's a coincidence? Or did cats always know? And the next fact is about something completely different, about how the Egyptians solved a problem that polite society doesn't talk about. And they solved it so effectively that modern science has only recently confirmed it. An unknown work by Mozart, a piece by the famous composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, which had been kept in the libraries of Leipzig for over 100 years, was recently discovered during work on a new edition of the Köchel catalog. This catalog is a reference guide to Mozart's works and is compiled by the International Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg. The discovered serenade, titled Serenade XC, with a duration of 12 minutes, was likely written in the mid or late 1760s, when Mozart was between 10 and 13 years old. Ulrich Leisinger, the head of research at the foundation, noted that the style of the piece indicates an early stage in the composer's work, adding that at 17, he would not have written such a piece. Although authorship cannot be proven 100% according to Leisinger, the similarity to other works by Mozart from that period and the presence of his name on the sheet music indicate authenticity. The discovered composition was first presented at the International Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg and performed at the Leipzig Opera. Indonesia's star path. In 1992, geologist Castillo made a discovery that still causes shock. In the Kapanga province of Indonesia, he explored the Devil's Cave in the mountains and discovered an unusual stone. Mysterious symbols were engraved on its surface, resembling a star map. The markings on the stone are strikingly similar to the images on the plaques sent by NASA into space, with the Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11 probes in the 1970s. The stone depicts a man and a woman holding hands, as well as the sun, stars, and lines resembling roots. Geologists say the cave and stone processing date back hundreds of thousands of years. This casts doubt on its earthly origin, since at that time people supposedly could not have possessed such knowledge. Conspiracy theorists suggest that aliens received the message from the Pioneer probe, but made a miscalculation and missed the timing, ending up on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago. Perhaps they got stuck here and left their mark in the form of this stone. Another version says that the stone could have been created in a highly developed civilization, existed in Indonesia long before our era. The map depicts a star system with 1 star and 7 planets, almost an exact replica of the solar system. Modern scientists recognize 8 planets, but not long ago Neptune was considered an asteroid. Whoever the authors of the mysterious stone were, their knowledge of the stars remains a mystery, astonishing modern science. Persian windmills. These unique windmills are located in the city of Nashtifan in eastern Iran and are ancient structures that are almost 1,000 years old. They were built around the year 1000 and are among the earliest examples of the use of wind energy in the world. These mills differ from the familiar European models in their design. They have a vertical axis which is ideal for the local climate conditions. The strong winds blowing in this region turn the wooden blades connected to a vertical shaft, which drives the mechanism for grinding grain. What is especially impressive is that these mills are still in working condition today. They are made from natural materials, such as wood, clay, and reed, which not only highlight the craftsmanship of ancient Persian builders, but also ensure the durability of the structure for centuries. These mills not only served their practical purpose, but also became a symbol of the resilience and ingenuity of ancient engineers. Today, they are an important part of the cultural heritage, reminding us of how ancient civilizations were able to harness natural forces with minimal impact on the environment. The Nashtifan mills are a living testament to the technical genius of the ancient Persians, continuing to operate after thousands of years. Bassano vase, northern Italy, 15th century. At a wedding, a young bride is given a carved silver vase as a gift. The night ends with a murder. The bride dies with the vase in her hands and manages to curse the gift. After that, the vessel passes from relative to relative, and each new owner soon dies. The story repeats itself so many times that people begin to fear the object even more than any weapon. By the end of the 20th century, the vase was supposedly unearthed again. Inside was a folded sheet with an inscription in English: "Beware, this vase brings death." The warning didn't help. A pharmacist, surgeon, and archaeologist died after handling the object. In desperation, the vase was thrown out a window, almost hitting a police officer. The museum declined it, and afterward, its whereabouts became unknown. There's little documentation of these events online. This is more legend than proven museum artifact. But the legend has lived on for decades and continues to appear in collections of cursed objects. Objects sometimes enter history not through archaeologists, but through storytellers' memories. Crocodile contraception. Egyptian women use crocodile dung as a contraceptive, mixing it with honey and using it as a barrier method. This is not an insult, it's not a folktale, it's a documented medical recipe. The recipe comes from the Kahun Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts in history, written around 1850 BC. When Egyptologists first read this in the 19th century, there was silence in the hall of the British Scientific Society. Someone laughed, then everyone joined in. They filed it under Curiosities of Ancient Medicine and forgot about it for a century. In the 1960s, American biochemists accidentally returned to this topic, not because they were looking for it, but simply analyzing the composition of various organic substances and discovered something inconvenient. Crocodile dung has an acidic environment, and an acidic environment kills sperm cells. The method worked. The meeting hall of the British Scientific Society of the 19th century would have been very quiet at this moment, but that's not all. The same Kahun papyrus describes several other methods of contraception. Tampons made of linen fibers soaked in honey and acacia. When acacia decomposes, it releases lactic acid. Lactic acid is the active component of modern spermicidal gels, the same ones that are sold in pharmacies today. The first synthetic spermicide was created in the 1950s. The Egyptians used a natural equivalent 3,800 years before that. Without chemical laboratories, without microscopes, without any idea about sperm cells at all. Their existence was only discovered in the 17th century. They simply observed, noticed what worked, and recorded it. Official science says. Accidental discovery, an empirical method without a theoretical basis. But wait, the Kahun papyrus describes not just one or two methods, but more than 10. Different substances, different methods of application, different situations. This is not an accidental discovery. This is systematic observation over generations. This is research, just research without a name. Imagine a woman in 1850 BC. She comes to the doctor opens the papyrus, finds the right section, explains the methods, and she chooses. This is not barbarism, this is a medical consultation. But they really shouldn't have added crocodile dung to honey. Most likely it just scared away the nearby rats. But overall, the direction was absolutely correct. And since we're talking about Egyptian medicine, here's the next fact about it. About an organ that the Egyptians considered completely useless. They threw it away during mummification, just into the trash. And that organ was something without which you wouldn't be able to finish watching this video right now. Bronze artifacts in Turkey. In the ruins of the ancient Ayanis castle, located in modern-day Turkey, archaeologists discovered bronze shields and a helmet that are about 2,700 years old. These artifacts, found under a 20-meter layer of debris, were created during the time of the Urartian kingdom and were probably used for ceremonial purposes to honor the god Kaldi, the protector in war. The Ayanis castle was built as a fortress and royal residence during the reign of King Rusa II in the 7th century BC. However, it stood for only 20 to 25 years before it was destroyed by an earthquake. Recently discovered bronze shields and a helmet were found in the ceremonial hall of the castle. The decorations on the helmet and the intricate patterns on the shields confirm that they were used in religious rituals. Previously, other bronze items were found at this site, many of which are dedicated to Kaldi, the chief god of the Urartians, who was believed to protect them during battles. Despite minor damage, the artifacts are well preserved, and restoration will help fully recover them. The Ayanis fortress continues to be the richest source of Urartian bronze artifacts in Turkey, and each discovery provides more information about the culture of this ancient kingdom. The two-headed alien. A strange mummy with two heads was discovered in Tibet, and it was immediately dubbed the two-headed alien. This artifact caused shock among scientists and mysticism enthusiasts. The mummy looks as if its origin is beyond this world, which gives rise to many theories, from mutations to extraterrestrial civilizations. Some researchers believe that this could be a ritual artifact or occult image created by ancient people to worship unknown forces. Interestingly, the structure of the mummy looks unusual even for known biological mutations. The proportions of its body and the shape of its heads suggest that it could have been the embodiment of something mythical or otherworldly. Ancient Tibetan legends often mention celestial beings who visited the earth. Perhaps this artifact is an attempt to depict those whom the ancients considered gods. However, there is also a more down-to-earth version. The mummy could be the result of artificial mummification of two different bodies joined together for ritual purposes. Winged demon on an ancient seal. In Israel, a 2,700-year-old stone seal was found with an image of a winged figure and inscriptions on the ancient seal. The find was made near the southern wall of the Temple Mount and dates back to the period of the First Temple. The seal is made of black stone and is decorated with an inscription, which translates as "For Yehuezer," son of Hashayahu. Archaeologists noted that this is one of the most beautiful seals found in Jerusalem. The seal depicts a winged figure dressed in a striped shirt and a headdress. According to Assyriologist Dr. Philip Vukasovich, such winged demons are found in Neo-Assyrian art of the 9th to 7th centuries BC and served as protective magical figures. The seal probably belonged to a high-ranking official of the Kingdom of Judah and served as both an amulet and a symbol of authority. It reflects not only Assyrian influence, but also the owner's connection to the local Judean culture. Crystal reliquary. This reliquary, created in France between 1175 and 1200, is a work of art and religious craftsmanship. It is made of gold and silver and decorated with rock crystal, which adds transparency and lightness to it. Inside, it could have contained the relics of saints or other valuable relics that held great significance for believers. Such reliquaries often became objects of veneration. They were displayed in churches and monasteries, where they attracted pilgrims from all corners. The design of the reliquary itself is especially interesting. It is made in the shape of a miniature building with decorative arches, with columns and small figures of saints, symbolizing the idea of a spiritual temple. A transparent cylinder made of rock crystal allowed believers to see the contents, which strengthened their faith in the holiness of the relics kept inside. Silver amulet. In Germany, not far from Frankfurt, archaeologists discovered a unique artifact. The silver amulet is known as the Frankfurt silver inscription. This is the oldest evidence of Christianity north of the Alps, dating to around 230 to 270 AD. The discovery significantly expands our understanding of the spread of Christianity in the Roman Empire. The amulet was found during excavations of a Roman cemetery in the Heilmannstrasse area in the ancient city of Nida. Among the 127 burials, special attention was drawn to the grave of a man aged 30 to 45 years. Along with unusual burial gifts such as ceramics and an incense burner, a rolled-up piece of silver foil was found under his chin. Analysis showed that it was a phylactery. The amulet is intended to protect its wearer. The contents of the inscription, applied to the silver, were deciphered using computed tomography. The text in Latin consists of 18 lines and contains exclusively Christian formulas. Holy, 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 and in the name of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. It also includes quotes from the Epistle to the Philippians by Apostle Paul. This discovery proves that Christianity spread in the region several decades earlier than previously thought. Nida, as a major Roman cultural and administrative center, became a place where the new religion was able to take root in a multicultural environment. The brain as trash. During mummification, the brain was simply thrown away using a metal hook through the nostril. They inserted an instrument, mashed the contents of the skull into a liquid state, turned the head over, and disposed of what flowed out like construction debris, like scraps of cloth, like ashes from a hearth. The heart was carefully removed and left inside the body. The lungs, stomach, intestines, and liver, each organ was packed into a separate canopic jar with a lid shaped like a protective god. They were kept next to the mummy, guarded, and considered sacred. The brain in the trash, because the heart was the organ of thought, the organ of feelings, the organ of the soul. When an Egyptian said, "I thought," he would place his hand on his chest, not on his head. When he said, "I felt," he did the same. In this worldview, the brain was simply a filler for the skull, something like packing material. Official science says religious delusion is characteristic of the soul. That sounds logical, but here's where it starts to fall apart. In the Edwin Smith Surgical Papyrus, a medical treatise written around 1600 BC, there are 48 detailed clinical cases with symptoms, diagnoses, and prognoses, and among them are several cases of accidental head injuries. The Egyptian physician notes, a head injury causes loss of movement in the opposite arm, while a neck injury results in loss of speech. He documented that a skull injury caused someone to stop recognizing loved ones, revealing a link between the head and body. And yet during mummification, the brain was still thrown away as garbage. Imagine a physician who observes every day what happens to people after head injuries. Who knows for sure that something inside there controls the body, and who on the same evening assists with a mummification and calmly throws the brain out through the nostril. Because religion says one thing, but your eyes see another. This is the first documented conflict between observation and dogma in the history of medicine. 3,000 years before Galileo, 3,000 years before the church banned dissections in Europe, they were trapped by their own system. They knew, but couldn't apply it. They saw, but couldn't name it. Modern neurosurgeons regard the Edwin Smith Papyrus as a historical source, not as a curiosity, but as a source. That is, terms that have no analogs in any other ancient medical system in the world. The brain was discarded, but observations about it were recorded. This is perhaps the most human aspect of this whole story. And the last thing I promised at the beginning, the fact that personally blew my mind, is the following. And it's about a ritual that the pharaoh performed publicly, on schedule, and which was recorded as an official state act. The Sword of Ramses, northwest Egypt, the archaeological site of Tel el-Abyad on the coast. During the excavations here, a bronze sword was unearthed with the name of Ramses II engraved on it. The very same pharaoh who ruled for more than 60 years in the 13th century BC. Inscribed weapons are rare, so the find immediately became a key discovery. The layer where the blade was found is associated with military activity on the coast. Archaeologists are cautiously discussing several scenarios: garrison weaponry, a trophy after a clash, or material evidence of battles with the so-called Sea Peoples. These are working theories for now. There is no definitive answer yet. Analyses are ongoing. The context is reinforced by other finds. 2 limestone blocks with inscriptions were discovered nearby. On one, the name of Rameses II is repeated. On the other, an official name Bey is mentioned. In the same layer, a whole cow was found, placed as a sacrifice. Nearby, there were burnt cow bones near the ovens. Such offerings are associated with ideas of strength, abundance, and divine protection. In addition, a series of scarabs was collected. On one, it reads Amun, Lord of the Sky. On a fragment of a bronze ring, Amun Harakti. There are also beads with semi-precious inlays. If the sword has not been in battle, it connects a specific ruler with a specific shore. And if the connection with coastal wars is confirmed, we will have a direct artifact of Egypt's struggle for control over the sea. A mysterious substance in the coffin. In the northwest of China, in the Xinjiang region, archaeologists made a shocking discovery. In an ancient coffin about 3,600 years old where Bronze Age mummies were found, a mysterious substance was discovered on the neck of one of the women. Today, scientists are confident that this is the oldest cheese in the world. Researchers extracted DNA from this substance and found out that it is kefir cheese made from cows' and goats' milk. This discovery is important for understanding the origin of kefir and the evolution of probiotic bacteria. Xiaomei Fu, from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, together with her colleagues, analyzed the bacteria, yeast, and proteins in the sample, which made it possible to identify the ancient cheese. Research shows that kefir cheese was important for people of that time. It may have been placed in the grave as part of burial customs or as food for the afterlife. Interestingly, 2 types of cheese were found in the coffin, one made from goat's milk, the other from cow's milk. Genetic studies have shown that the microorganisms in the cheese are similar to modern kefir strains found in East Asia and Tibet. Because of this, the question arises about the geographical origin of kefir. It was previously believed that kefir originated in the Caucasus, but new data suggests the possibility of a second source in Xinjiang. These results show that kefir spread around the world in different ways, and its history is closely linked to the evolution of human culture. The four-eyed figurine. This mysterious figurine, known as the four-eyed, was found in the territory of modern-day Serbia. The age of the artifact is estimated to be over 7,000 years, making it one of the oldest finds associated with the pre-literate culture of the Balkans. The figurine depicts a humanoid with 4 eyes, or perhaps with elements resembling a mask. There is a hypothesis that these 4 eyes are actually part of a mask or headdress, and the figurine itself might not depict a real being, but rather a mythical or divine creature revered in that society. There is even a bold suggestion that it could be something resembling a spacesuit, hinting at contact with something extraterrestrial. Although, of course, this remains in the realm of fantasy. Very little is known about the purpose of the figurine. It may have been used in rituals or served as a symbol of a protector or patron. This artifact raises more questions than answers and continues to spark debates among archaeologists and mystery enthusiasts. The four-eyed is one of those rare artifacts that not only reveal fragments of the past to us, but also ignite our imagination. Buddha in Nirvana? Underground, at the site of the ruins of the 7th century Buddhist monastery and temple Vajjinatepa, archaeologists discovered fragments of frescoes, stupas, and reliefs depicting Buddha. Unfortunately, many of them were disfigured and partially destroyed even in ancient times. One of the most famous discoveries was a 13-meter statue of Buddha in Nirvana. It was made from Pax blocks of compressed clay, a material used in ancient times to create large sculptures. The statue was found in a ruined state, so it was literally assembled piece by piece. After the excavation, it was divided into 72 parts and transported to the Museum of Antiquities of Tajikistan for restoration. You can see the original Buddha in Nirvana there, and its copy is exhibited in the National Museum of Tajikistan. These discoveries not only reveal important chapters in the history of Buddhism in Central Asia, but also highlight the significance of Vajjinatepa as a center of spiritual culture in the ancient region. Masturbation as a state act. The pharaoh was required to masturbate into the Nile publicly according to a schedule. This is not a metaphor, not an insult. It is a documented state ritual with a name, a date in their calendar, and official witnesses. According to Egyptian cosmogony, the god Atum created the entire world in exactly this way, from himself alone. The first act of creation was not a flash of light or a word, but exactly this. And the flooding of the Nile, on which the harvest, food, taxes, the army, and the very existence of Egypt depended, was directly linked to this primordial act. The pharaoh reenacted the creation of the world every year, in the right month, on the right day. This was not lust, it was a state necessity, according to mainstream scholarship. A fertility ritual, typical for the agrarian religions of the ancient world. That's true, but that's usually where people stop, and that's when things get interesting. In certain periods of Egyptian history, this ritual was performed not by the pharaoh himself, but by a specially appointed priest, an official representative with a title, with duties specified in the temple charter, with a salary. This was a position in the temple's official staff. Imagine you come to apply for a job, they give you a papyrus with a list of duties. You read the first item. You read it again, you look at the scribe looks at you. Completely serious. Welcome to the oldest HR department in human history. But here's what really amazes you. If you step away from the absurdity, the Egyptians built an entire theological system around this ritual. The calendar of the Nile flood, astronomical observations, the priestly hierarchy, and the logic of the state. All of this worked as a single mechanism and functioned flawlessly for 3,000 years. For comparison, the Egyptian one lasted about 500 years, the British about 400, but Egyptian civilization, with this ritual in its calendar, lasted 3,000. Maybe there's nothing to laugh at. And there's another point that's usually not mentioned. Greek historians Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus wrote about Egyptian rituals with barely concealed horror. They called them barbaric, obscene, and unworthy of a civilized person. At the same time, Greek religion includes the cult of Dionysus, with rituals that are better left undescribed during the daytime. But for some reason, Herodotus wrote about this much more mildly. Foreign things always seem stranger than the familiar. And one last fact before the finale, which I saved for last on purpose, because it's about money, about prices, and about the fact that Egyptians knew the value of absolutely everything, from a loaf of bread to a divorce down to a single grain of wheat. The Byzantine urn of Sutton Hoo is familiar to everyone from the ship burial, but nearby in Bromswell, they found something no less strange. A copper vessel from the 6th century, made in the eastern Mediterranean. On the outside, there's a hunting scene, warriors' legs, leaping lions, pure luxury export. Along the rim, there's a Greek inscription, drink in good health count and live happily for many years. When they excavated the base, it turned out there was no one left to drink from it. Inside, there were ashes with large pieces of horsebone, a typical marker of Anglo-Saxon nobility. Among the ashes, they found a carved comb made of deer antler. If DNA has been preserved in the teeth, scientists can determine the person's sex and age. The Byzantine chalice made its way to Anglo-Saxon Britain, and instead of wine, received the ashes of a nobleman. It's living proof that trade routes crisscrossed Europe long before modern highways. Mysterious tablets. This golden tablet is one of many unique discoveries made by Serbian archaeologists in the ancient city of Viminacium, located in what is now Serbia. Viminacium was an important Roman city and military camp that flourished from the 1st to the 4th centuries AD. However, the artifacts discovered, such as these tablets, indicate the existence of more ancient and mysterious customs here. Strange symbols are engraved on the tablets, unlike the familiar Latin or Greek letters, and their meaning remains a mystery to researchers. These signs could have been part of an unknown language, a code, or magical symbols used in religious rituals. Since the tablets are made of precious metals such as gold and silver, it can be assumed that they held special significance for those who created them. Perhaps they were amulets or talismans that protected the owner or brought good luck. Despite all the efforts of archaeologists, the mysterious symbols have not yet been deciphered, and they remain one of the greatest mysteries of Viminacium. Coffin on the roof. For centuries, human bodies have served as objects of anatomical study, and executed criminals often became the main source. However, as society changed, in the 19th century, medical schools began to suffer from a shortage of bodies for research. This problem gave rise to resurrectionists, people who dug up freshly buried corpses to sell to anatomists. To protect against such thefts, cemeteries installed cages, traps, and hired guards. Some bodies were even left in mortuaries so that decomposition would make them useless to robbers. But the Englishman Henry Trick found his own extremely unusual way. In his time, Stephen Agee was a wealthy grocer and was respected in society. However, one day he witnessed grave robbers digging up a body in a cemetery. This shocked him so much that he decided not to let that happen to him. In his will, Henry asked for his body to be placed in a lead coffin and set under the rafters of his own barn, far from the cemetery. He even provided a punishment for his relatives if his last will was violated. After his death in 1724, his body was indeed placed in the barn, which attracted a lot of curious visitors. Over time, the barn became a tavern, and Henry's coffin became a local attraction. However, his remains met a sad fate. Visitors and soldiers took them as souvenirs, and by the beginning of the 20th century, only a small part of the skeleton remained. Today, Henry's coffin still rests in the barn, but the remains are lost, leaving behind only legends about his ghost. A female leader and mythological creatures. Archaeologists have discovered a throne room in Peru that dates back to the 7th century AD. Researchers found this ancient hall with columns and colorful frescoes in the coastal valley of Pañamarca, more than 400 kilometers from Lima. Scientists believe that the room was built by the Moche culture about 1,300 years ago, and it belonged to a female leader. The frescoes on the walls depict a woman on a throne receiving visitors. Archaeologists suggest that this may be an image of a ruler. The entire space of the hall was decorated with mythological scenes with no empty surfaces. Archaeologist Jose Ochatoma states that the scenes on the frescoes tell about the ideology of the Mochica, and another room called the Hall of Intertwined Serpents was discovered nearby. There, researchers saw frescoes depicting warriors and mythological creatures that had not been seen before in Peruvian archaeology. Ruins of the oldest civilization underwater. In the early 2000s, a team of researchers led by the Canadian company Advanced Digital Communications made a sensational discovery off the coast of Cuba. At a depth of about 600 to 750 meters on the ocean floor, strange structures resembling stone buildings were discovered. These structures looked like organized rows of giant stone blocks, some of which had a regular rectangular shape and resembled massive walls or pyramid-like buildings. The initial results of underwater research conducted using modern sonar led to the hypothesis of a possible sunken city that may have been swallowed by the ocean tens of thousands of years ago. According to some estimates, the age of these ruins may exceed 50,000 years, which is significantly older than the earliest known civilizations, such as Sumer and ancient Egypt. This makes the possible discovery even more intriguing, as it suggests the existence of ancient and possibly highly developed cultures,
которых наука пока ничего не знает.
Some scientists believe that these ruins may represent the remains of an ancient city built before the last ice age, when the sea level was significantly lower. There's a theory that this area could have been inhabited by ancient peoples who were later forced to leave their homes due to rising sea levels. This hypothesis is supported by proponents of the theory about the existence of ancient sunken continents, such as Atlantis, described in the works of Plato. Some geologists suggest that these formations may be the result of natural geological processes, such as erosion, earthquakes, and other movements of the Earth's crust. Further research and analysis of the underwater ruins off the coast of Cuba require significant resources and time. Let's hope that the authorities will find the resources to study these ancient ruins. Rare artifacts from the Titanic, an alligator leather handbag, and tiny perfume bottles that still emit a strong scent are just a few of the precious artifacts found during the excavation of the sunken Titanic. The location of the warehouse with these relics is strictly classified. It is only known that it is located in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. The shelves are filled with thousands of items, from an overturned bathtub and portholes to tiny buttons made of glassware. Thomasina Ray, the director of collections at RMS Titanic Inc., showed a bag made of alligator leather that belonged to Marion Minnis. Marion was a 63-year-old milliner who was traveling to the U.S. to visit her daughter. Important documents and photographs were preserved in her bag. Her tragic fate was that she had originally booked a ticket on another ship, but eventually ended up on the Titanic and became one of the 1,500 who perished. Among other artifacts are perfume bottles that belonged to Adolf Zielfeld, a perfumer and first-class passenger who survived the disaster. The scent of the perfume can still be detected even though it spent decades at the bottom of the ocean. The collection also includes a bottle of champagne with the drink still inside, found among a variety of kitchenware on the ocean floor. Titanic was a luxurious liner, and there was a huge amount of champagne on board for the first-class passengers who enjoyed the highest level of comfort. The tableware on board reflected the class division: plain white ceramics for third class, exquisite plates, and gold trim for first-class passengers. These items help recreate the atmosphere of life on board. The company RMS Titanic Inc., which is authorized to recover artifacts from the ship, recently announced its intention to retrieve the Marconi radio equipment that transmitted the distress signals. Some people believe that the sunken ship is a burial site that should be left undisturbed. However, Thomasina Ray notes the importance of preserving the memory of the tragedy through these artifacts. Do you think the ship should be left undisturbed, or should we try to bring it ashore? Share your opinion in the comments below the video. Ancient nocturnal bird totem. On Pontoon Island in the St. Johns River in Florida, a unique artifact was found: an ancient carved owl figure, the only one of its kind east of the Mississippi. This 3-meter sculpture, estimated to be between 700 and 800 years old, was carved from a single piece of pine and is believed to have once guarded the island's shore. In 1955, Victor Robke accidentally came across this totem while crossing the river. Today, a replica of the owl stands in the same place on Pontoon Island, which has become a state park. The original is kept at the National Museum of Fort Caroline in Jacksonville, and a fiberglass replica serves as a reminder of the ancient heritage. In addition to the owl totem, similar images of an otter and a pelican were found here, indicating the rich spiritual and cultural life of the indigenous peoples. The artifact was originally attributed to the Timucua people, but there is another hypothesis that it was created by the little-known Mayaka tribe, who spoke a different language. The function of the totem is not exactly known, but there are some assumptions. Some believe it was a clan symbol, others think it was a religious object, or a boundary marker. The details of the carving are striking: 2 eyes, 1 human and 1 owl, and 5 claws instead of the usual 4. It's possible that the owl was used as an object in shamanic rituals. Among Americans, it is often associated with the spirit of the night and as a protector of shamans. Used as a seat. In Turkey, an unexpected archaeological discovery was made. The stone, which for decades was used as a seat near a mosque in the city of Fatsa, turned out to be a Roman artifact almost 1,800 years old. This monument from the Roman Empire era dates back to the year 239 AD and is a Roman milestone which marked distances on the roads of the empire. Roman milestones played an important role in the transportation system that covered all of Anatolia. Installed every Roman mile, which is about 1.5 kilometers, they indicated the distance to the nearest cities and sometimes included the names of emperors or officials responsible for road construction. The stone discovered in Fatsa was dedicated to Emperor Gordian III and was installed to mark the reconstructed section of the port road connecting the Balaman and Yaluköy districts. The unusual use of the stone became known thanks to the literature teacher Aidan Bal, who noticed the unusual artifact near the Laleli Mosque. Local experts conducted the research. The inscription on the stone, translated by the epigraphist Hussein Sami Öztürk, confirmed its Roman origin. Originally, the Roman milestone was located along the Roman road, but it was moved in the 1970s during the construction of the mosque. Now the artifact has been sent to the Ordu Museum for further study. In ancient Egypt, prices were fixed for everything: bread, beer, donkey rental, divorce, funerals, weddings, medical services, and a place in a tomb. All of this was recorded. All of it was regulated. Deviating from the price list was punishable by a fine. The papyrus preserves specific figures: a pair of sandals, 2 deben of copper, a cow, 140 deben, a wooden door for a house, a 3-month ration for a worker, embalming of the highest category, a talent of silver, which is about a year's salary for a skilled craftsman. Embalming of the lowest category is 20 times cheaper, but back then the brain was thrown away, and it wasn't the only organ that ended up in the trash. Mainstream scholarship says, a centralized planned economy, characteristic of a theocratic state. That's right. But here's what's interesting. Prices weren't just fixed. They were public. They were placed at temple entrances, market gates, and carved on administrative building walls. Anyone, whether literate or not, could approach an official and ask, "How much does this cost?" And the official was required to answer according to the price list. No bargaining, no extra charges, no, "I'll give you a discount." Cheating a customer was a criminal offense. You come to the market, the merchant names a price. You know that according to the price list, it should be different. You go to the nearest official, and the official fines the merchant on the spot. This is not a fantasy. It is described in the administrative papyri of the New Kingdom era. Now compare it to today. In most countries of the world, consumer rights protection as a separate legal concept only appeared in the middle of the 20th century. In the United States, the first federal consumer protection law was in 1962, and in Europe, systematic protection appeared in the 1970s and 1980s. Egypt introduced a public price list and criminal liability for deceiving a buyer 3,000 years before that. And there's one more detail that completely changes the picture. Court cases about price disputes were found in papyri. Ordinary people, not officials or priests, sued merchants and won. A woman named Kinut Nefer filed a complaint against a cloth merchant who raised the price by a tridebina. A tridebina is less than a kilogram of copper. It was a tiny amount, but she went to court and won because the system worked. Not perfectly, but it worked. Today, the average person in a developed country would think twice before suing over being overcharged at a store. An Egyptian woman, 3,000 years ago, just went and won. That's all about the Egypt we were shown in textbooks. The Great Pyramids, mysterious hieroglyphs, the golden masks of pharaohs. But behind this facade, salaries paid in beer, crocodiles traded for honey at pharmacies, cats worth more than Roman soldiers, and a divorce price list at the temple entrance. So, the Egypt we were shown at school is the front entrance. Pyramids, pharaohs, golden masks. Today, we entered through the back door. Salaries paid in beer, eyebrows shaved off, teeth worn down by bread, doctors under threat of execution, workers who sat down and won, women with rights, 3,000 years before Europe, a cat more valuable than a Roman soldier, crocodile fat for medicine in the medical handbook, brain thrown away, pharaoh on a schedule, and the price of divorce posted at the entrance to the temple. None of these facts are made up. They are all found in papyri, in museums, in tombs. There just wasn't room for them between the dates of conquests. If you found this interesting, subscribe. The next episode is coming soon. There's something to hide there too, even more so. And write in the comments which fact surprised you the most today. I'm really curious. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.